Every EV maker on Earth has the same broken promise: range anxiety. Tesla hasn't fixed it. BYD hasn't fixed it. But Mazda just killed it, with an engine the industry buried in 2012. No battery breakthrough, no subsidy, no new charging network, just a 50-year-old rotary engine. Except this one doesn't power the wheels at all. It just makes electricity. By the end of this video, you'll know why engineers at Tesla and BYD are walking back into their labs right now, asking one question: did we miss something obvious? Let's get into it. The company nobody saw coming. To understand why this announcement matters as much as it does, you have to understand who Mazda actually is. And this is not a flashy company. Never has been. They don't do laser shows on a stage in front of 10,000 people. They don't promise robo-taxis that are always 5 years away. They don't have a founder tweeting at 2 a.m. trying to move markets. They just quietly build cars that people fall in love with, generation after generation, and let the engineering speak for itself. Mazda started in 1920 in Hiroshima, Japan, originally making cork products and machine tools, about as far from the glamour of the modern auto industry as you can get. Their first actual vehicle rolled out in 1931, a tiny three-wheeled truck called the Mazda Go. Nothing about it screamed future of the automobile. But underneath the surface, this company always had a different kind of engineering culture: quiet, stubborn, patient, willing to bet on ideas that everyone else in the room had already dismissed as impossible. Then World War II happened. Hiroshima was ground zero. The scale of destruction there is almost impossible to put into words, and most businesses in that city simply never came back. Entire industries vanished overnight. Mazda did come back, and when they rebuilt, they didn't rebuild cautiously, the way a company terrified of failure rebuilds. They rebuilt with purpose. In the 1960s, they made a decision that shocked the entire engineering world. They licensed rotary engine technology that every single other manufacturer on the planet had already written off as too fragile, too thirsty, and too impractical to ever survive in a real production car. Experts said the maintenance costs alone would sink it. Mazda made it work anyway. The Cosmos Sport launched in 1967, and the automotive industry had to stop and pay attention, whether they wanted to or not. That rotary engine became Mazda's signature for the next 50 years. Instead of pistons violently slamming up and down thousands of times a minute, a triangular rotor spins smoothly and continuously inside an oval housing. No valves crashing open and shut. No crankshaft converting back and forth motion into rotation. Just elegant, continuous spin. The size advantage alone is staggering. A rotary engine producing the same power as a conventional engine can be roughly the size of a watermelon. That's not an exaggeration for effect. That's just physics working in Mazda's favor. But the old rotary carried two problems that eventually caught up with it. It drank fuel like it had a personal grudge against your wallet, because the combustion chamber geometry meant not all the fuel burned as cleanly as it should have. And it ran hot, genuinely hot, which wore down the internal apex seals faster than any conventional engine component. Maintenance costs climbed. Oil consumption crept higher than owners expected. By 2012, when the beloved RX-8 was finally discontinued, most people simply assumed the rotary engine was dead for good. Just another beautiful idea that couldn't survive contact with the real world. Fast forward to today. Mazda sells vehicles in over 120 countries and moves roughly 1.2 million cars a year. Their SUV lineup, the CX-5, the CX-60, the CX-90, turned Mazda into something genuinely rare in this industry. Affordable luxury that actually feels luxurious. Not a stripped-down budget brand pretending to be more, and not an overpriced premium badge charging you for a logo. Something in between that makes buyers feel like they got more car than they paid for. Their interior materials rival brands costing 20 or 30% more. Their driving dynamics are tuned with a precision most mainstream manufacturers stopped bothering with decades ago. And their customer loyalty numbers are some of the strongest in the entire industry. People who buy a Mazda tend to come back and buy another one. That kind of trust doesn't come from a marketing budget. It comes from consistently delivering on a promise. And here's where the story gets genuinely interesting. While every other automaker on Earth was racing to announce EV roadmaps, holding press conferences about solid-state batteries and promising fully electric lineups by 2030. Mazda was quietly doing something in their engineering labs that almost nobody outside the company was paying attention to. They brought the rotary engine back from the dead, not as nostalgia, not as a limited-run collector's item for enthusiasts to admire in a garage, as the centerpiece of a completely new answer to the single biggest unsolved problem in the entire electric vehicle industry. The announcement that changed the conversation. Here's the problem nobody in this industry wants to say out loud, even though everybody driving an EV already knows it. Charging infrastructure is not keeping pace with EV growth, not in America, not in most of Europe, not really anywhere outside a handful of major metro corridors. Wait times at popular charging stations during peak travel periods are real, they're documented, and they're not shrinking as fast as the industry promised they would. Grid capacity in major cities is becoming a genuine bottleneck that utility companies are openly struggling to solve, not next year, but right now. And the constant refrain that it'll all get better soon is wearing thin for ordinary buyers who need a car that reliably works today, not in some optimistic future scenario built on infrastructure that hasn't been built yet. Mazda's answer wasn't a bigger battery. It wasn't another promise that charging speeds will magically improve in 18 months. It wasn't asking customers to change their habits or plan road trips around a charging map. It was a question that almost nobody else in this industry seriously asked out loud. What if the car just handles range anxiety completely on its own? What if a tiny, ultra-efficient engine running quietly in the background keeps the battery topped up while you drive, so the driver never has to think about it at all? That's the foundation of the MX-30R EV platform, and it's the backbone of everything Mazda just announced. The rotary engine in this car does not power the wheels directly. Let that sink in for a second, because it's the whole point. It's a generator, and only a generator. Its entire job in life is to spin at one perfectly constant, perfectly efficient speed and make electricity. Nothing more, nothing less. And Mazda didn't just dust off the old blueprints. They rebuilt this engine from the inside out, piece by piece. Direct injection now delivers fuel with extreme precision straight into the combustion chamber, eliminating the wasted, unburned fuel that plagued earlier rotary designs. A completely redesigned thermal management system, new cooling channels, new airflow geometry, smarter temperature sensing throughout, solves the overheating problem that used to define the rotary's entire reputation. Not reduces it, solves it. The internal components are coated with diamond-like carbon, a coating technology borrowed straight out of aerospace and racing applications, cutting friction so dramatically that the engine runs smoother and quieter than almost anything else on the market today. And the apex seals, the exact component that used to wear out fast and give the rotary its unreliable reputation for half a century, have been completely re-engineered using new materials and new sealing geometry. Mazda's own testing data suggests these new seals can last as long as a conventional piston engine's components. That's not a minor upgrade. That's Mazda quietly erasing the single biggest argument that's been used against the rotary engine for 50 straight years. The result is a system so compact it barely takes up any meaningful space at all, which means Mazda kept the MX-30R EV's cabin fully spacious while still nailing near-perfect weight distribution. And that matters enormously because low weight and balanced handling are exactly what makes a Mazda feel like a Mazda the second you turn the wheel. Here's the part that should genuinely worry Tesla and BYD. When you're driving normally, the electric motor handles everything. The cabin is silent. Power delivery is instant and smooth, exactly like any other EV on the road. When the battery drops to a certain threshold, the rotary generator quietly kicks in, and you barely notice it happening. A faint hum at most, quieter than your tires on the highway, quieter than the wind, quieter than your music playing at a normal volume. The battery climbs back up. The generator shuts back off automatically. No plugging in required at any point in your daily routine. No mental math about whether you'll make it to the next charger. No waiting around in a parking lot watching a percentage tick upward. Why this isn't just a hybrid? Now some of you are already thinking, okay, so it's a hybrid. Automakers have been doing hybrids for almost 30 years now. Toyota's been running this playbook since the original Prius back in 1997. What exactly is new here? Here's what's actually new, and it's a bigger distinction than it sounds like. This is not a hybrid trying to squeeze a few extra miles per gallon out of a gasoline engine that's still doing most of the heavy lifting. This is a genuine full EV, full electric driving experience, full electric torque, full silent cabin, that simply happens to carry a tiny, ultra-efficient backup generator instead of a battery pack 3 or 4 times the size. The battery in this system can be roughly a quarter of the size needed to deliver a comparable range in a pure EV. Think carefully about what that actually solves, because the implications stack up fast. A quarter of the battery means a quarter of the lithium, cobalt, nickel, and manganese that most EVs are completely dependent on, raw materials mined in a small handful of countries under supply chains that are becoming more geopolitically tangled every single year. A quarter of the battery means the car weighs meaningfully less, handles better in every condition, and costs less to manufacture from day one. And most importantly, it means the range anxiety conversation, the single biggest objection stopping millions of ordinary American car buyers from going electric in the first place, simply evaporates. It's not reduced, it's gone. You don't need a coast-to-coast charging network to own this car comfortably. You don't need to be an early adopter willing to tolerate inconvenience in the name of a greener future. You don't need to plan a road trip around an app showing you which chargers are actually working today. You just need to want a great car that happens to drive electric most of the time. That's the entire strategic insight buried inside this announcement. Mazda identified the precise gap between where EVs currently sit and where they need to be to genuinely replace gasoline cars for everyone, everywhere, and then built a product that fills that exact gap without asking the customer to sacrifice a single thing. And the timing lines up almost perfectly with what's actually happening in the real world right now. In Europe, where government EV mandates are written directly into law, but charging networks outside major cities remain patchy and unreliable, hybrid and range extender sales have been growing faster than pure EV sales in several major markets over the last 2 years, including Germany, France, and the Netherlands. Mazda didn't guess at this shift. They read the room correctly, while every other automaker was still repeating the same electric or nothing talking points from 5 years ago. What this means for Tesla and BYD. Tesla built its entire identity, its entire trillion-dollar valuation on one single bet. The future is pure electric, full stop, and everything else is a compromise or a distraction. That bet built one of the most valuable companies in automotive history. It made Elon Musk the single most talked about person in this industry for over a decade straight. But that bet depends completely on charging infrastructure keeping pace with demand. And right now, in 2026, it simply isn't keeping pace. Not close. BYD, on the other hand, has been genuinely smart about hybrids for years now, and their plug-in systems have been competitive on price in a way that's forced Western automakers to scramble. But BYD wins primarily through volume and manufacturing scale. Cheaper batteries, cheaper labor, more units off the line every single day. Mazda isn't trying to out-cheap BYD, and they know they can't. They're competing on a completely different axis entirely. Engineering elegance, driving feel, and a premium experience that justifies a higher price tag without apology. Two completely different games, played on completely different fields, and Mazda deliberately picked the one lane where BYD's biggest weapon simply doesn't apply. What's genuinely uncomfortable for both of these giants is that Mazda didn't need a $100 billion war chest to pull this off. They didn't need a government-subsidized gigafactory the size of a small city. They used an engine they already understood better than any other company on the planet, pointed it at a problem nobody else had bothered to solve properly, and quietly built their way around two of the biggest, best-funded companies in the history of the automotive industry. That's not a scale advantage, that's an idea advantage. And ideas, it turns out, are a lot harder to compete with than money. All right, before we go any further, if this kind of deep dive into the real engineering behind the headlines is exactly what you come here for, Now's the time to hit that like button, drop a comment telling me which automaker you want us to cover next, and if you haven't already, subscribe and tap that notification bell. We put out videos exactly like this one, breaking down the stories the mainstream auto press glosses over, and you genuinely don't want to miss the next one. The part even. The analysts are missing. Here's where this gets bigger than one single car. Mazda has already filed patents for a hydrogen-powered version of this exact same rotary generator architecture. Same compact package, same smooth, near-silent operation, same range extender concept underneath it all, except running on hydrogen instead of gasoline, with tailpipe emissions that are, for all practical purposes, just water vapor. There's serious, well-funded hydrogen infrastructure investment happening right now in Japan, in Germany, in South Korea, and in parts of the Middle East. If that infrastructure genuinely matures over the next decade, the way several governments are actively betting billions of dollars that it will, Mazda's rotary platform could pull off a third complete power transition, from piston to gas electric to hydrogen electric, without ever needing to design a brand new vehicle architecture from scratch. Most automakers have to scrap an entire platform every single time the fuel conversation shifts direction. Mazda built one that just keeps adapting underneath the same core idea. And there's an environmental argument buried in here that almost nobody in the mainstream conversation is actually making, because it complicates the simple story everyone wants to tell. In regions where the electricity grid still leans heavily on coal or natural gas, and that includes large parts of Asia, large parts of Eastern Europe, and honestly a fair amount of the United States too, a highly efficient range extender hybrid that runs on electric power for the vast majority of daily driving can actually produce lower life cycle emissions than a pure EV charged off that exact same dirty grid. This is not a pro-gasoline argument dressed up in green language. This is just basic arithmetic. And Mazda's new thermal efficiency numbers, which genuinely represent a real leap forward for rotary technology, back that math up with real testing data instead of a marketing slide. So when people ask, is Mazda secretly anti-EV? No, not even close. Mazda simply refused to accept the industry's core assumption that electric and battery only have to mean exactly the same thing. Remember how we opened this video? Mazda found the one flaw every single EV on the road still has, and instead of promising to fix it someday, the way every other automaker keeps promising, they made it disappear entirely. That flaw is range anxiety, and the fix wasn't a bigger battery, it wasn't a faster charger, it wasn't a government subsidy, or a trillion-dollar infrastructure bill. It was a 50-year-old engine that the rest of the industry had already buried and forgotten, brought back with modern materials, modern sealing technology, and modern manufacturing precision, repurposed to do a job it was never originally designed to do. That's the real story here, and it's easy to miss if you only skim the headlines. Not Mazda made another hybrid. Mazda took the single biggest objection, stopping millions of ordinary drivers from switching to electric, and quietly, without a single confetti cannon or keynote stage, made that objection completely irrelevant. And now every automaker on the planet, Tesla included, BYD included, has to go back to their engineering departments and ask themselves, honestly, whether they've actually explored every possible answer to this problem, or whether they just assumed the answer everyone already agreed on was the only one worth pursuing. Whether this rotary range extender becomes the dominant EV architecture of the next 20 years, or simply serves as a crucial bridge technology while charging infrastructure slowly catches up, one thing is already undeniably true. Mazda changed the conversation in an industry that desperately needed someone, anyone, to change it. So where do you land on this one? Are you team, finally someone actually solved the real problem instead of just talking about it? Or are you still firmly in the give me a real full battery EV or give me nothing camp? Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, genuinely impressed by the engineering, but not totally sold yet on the concept. Either way, let me know exactly where you stand in the comments. I read every single one, and I mean that. If you're new here, welcome to Motor Zen. We cover car culture from every corner of the world, the engineering decisions, the history, the business bets, the stories that serious car people actually want to understand, not just the surface-level headlines everyone else is repeating. We don't pick sides between brands, and we're not chasing hype for the sake of hype. We follow the story wherever the engineering genuinely leads us, even when that means a 50-year-old technology everyone thought was dead turns out to be the smartest idea in the entire industry. If you got something out of this one, hit subscribe and tap that notification bell so you catch the next deep dive the second it drops. And if you know somebody who still insists the rotary engine is dead and buried, send them this video. They're about to be very, very surprised. See you in the next one.